I'm Chuck Trawick with Infotronics. We're a Microsoft channel partner located in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been a Microsoft partner for quite some time and have been working with SharePoint Business Intelligence and Development also for a long time. The series that you're about to view were recorded for SharePoint Saturday Charlotte event, January 26, 2013, at the Central Piedmont Community College in the Charlotte area. The focus of these videos is SharePoint Designer 2013, the new features and how they relate to SharePoint 2013. From time to time, our company, Infotronics, provides free seminars on the SharePoint environment. As you can see on this slide, we have several events coming up in the foreseeable future. If you're interested in attending one of these complimentary events, please go to infotronics-inc.com, click on the Events tab, and then further down the page you will see register buttons for the 4 events hosted in Charlotte and Atlanta. These are educational, all-day events at no charge, with the purpose to get you more skilled at using and applying SharePoint to your organization. We do not hound you and overmarket to you or whatever. We just make this investment in the marketplace, and if you need help, hope that you will call us to help you. Now, in order to move forward with the environment, we first need to set up a proper Hyper-V or server environment so that you can run all the things we're going to show a bit later. I'm running on a Windows 8 Enterprise machine. Within Windows 8 now comes with Hyper-V version 3. We have a virtual machine set up that has 16 gig of RAM and 125 gig of hard drive. Within that environment, we installed Windows Server 2012 Standard, SQL Server 2012 Standard with Service Pack 1, SharePoint 2013 Enterprise, Office 2013 Professional Plus, Visio 2013 Professional, SharePoint Designer 2013, Workflow Manager, and Power Pivot for SharePoint 2013. I know that sounds like a lot of things, but all of these tools kind of work together, and it will make sense as we go through this. You will see at the bottom there the links for getting trial versions of all this software. In the upper right are best practices recommended by Microsoft. Suggest you go out to sharepoint.microsoft.com and read up on the best practices for SharePoint 2013. In red, there are a couple gotchas to avoid. When you install SharePoint 2013, you're going to be prompted to create a system or farm account. That account has elevated permission and can do anything within your SharePoint environment. So in order to increase the security profile, Microsoft now stipulates that you need to have at least 2 accounts for testing. You cannot create workflows with a farm account, nor can you execute workflows with a farm account. So you want to have a second account that has owner permission to the site or sites that you want the workflow to be created and executed on. Secondly, the second link from the bottom there, Workflow Manager, that runs like a second server for SharePoint 2013 workflows. When you create that, you want to create that and install that logged on as that system or farm account. When you run through that wizard, you're going to get a screen that's going to give you some options for what to install. You want to install and check on, in my opinion, HTTP as a protocol as well as HTTPS, especially if you're doing an all-in-one server for testing, deployment, or training. When that is completed, excuse me, you need to run a PowerShell command that links your workflow service back into your SharePoint environment. You want to use the PowerShell that is the PowerShell tool inside the SharePoint environment that's on the SharePoint menu. Now what we're going to discuss today first on a couple of slides is what's new in the SharePoint 2013 environment that relates to workflows. how we're going to use that to create decisions and actions, some demos, and we will not have time to include the questions we normally get at these events. This slide shows architectural changes between the previous version of SharePoint, version 2010, and now. You will see that in both of these environments, the SharePoint 2010 workflow platform runs inside the SharePoint Server workspace. But on SharePoint Server 2013, the 2013 style workflows run outside of the SharePoint Server workspace and uses REST protocols and Windows Communication Foundation to communicate between the two environments. There's several reasons for this. It gives you better security, better performance. You can scale your workflows up and down. You can have multiplicity of deployment options. You can put it in the cloud or on-premise or hybrid. And it gives you much more granular control of your environment. This slide hopefully illustrates this in a little bit more clear manner, that you can, with SharePoint Designer 2013, still create SharePoint 2010 style workflows. They can run inside the SharePoint workspace like I showed in the previous slide, but the new ones can run outside, either in a server on your premise, in the Azure cloud, or somewhere else with a hosted provider. We now have a new visual designer that I'll talk about in a minute. There are now new templates built into Visual Studio 2012 that make creating Visual Studio workflows easier. And it's now a lot easier to create a custom action that you can add into SharePoint Designer 2013. You'll see here a list of several features that have been depreciated in this version. That does not mean that these capabilities that these features provide has gone away. There are just different ways or different methods for achieving the same result. You can, as I said, create SharePoint 2010 style workflows as well as SharePoint 2013 style workflows. And so several of these things have been replaced with new tools. For example, there is now a visual designer. In the past, there was an attempt to have a visual designer out of Visio, but there were several steps involved in trying to get that into SharePoint Designer or into Visual Studio. That now is much more fluid, and it's a one-step process. Excuse me. So, for example, let's say that somebody in accounts payable needed a multi-stage approval process on invoices. They know exactly what they need to have happen, but they don't know how to make it happen in the SharePoint environment. So by using the Visio 2013 SharePoint workspace template, they can drag objects onto a design surface, put some notes on it about what has to happen in each place, and save that and share it with, say, IT. They can then read that in directly and then use it and flip right over to the text Designer workflow environment. We'll show you. No intermediate steps, we'll show that. You can now embed web service calls. That's a very powerful feature. Lets us grab data from all kinds of places. There are new wizards for task actions so that it's very easy to get really complex things done and you don't have to be a programmer to do it. You can now have two styles of workflows together. A SharePoint 2013 style workflow can call a SharePoint 2010 style workflow. There is now a dictionary data type. So let's say we had a John Smith in our organization. Previously, we'd have had to go around our elbow to get a lot of data at one time. We'd have had to do something custom. If we wanted to get John's phone number, where he was at, his email address, his manager, and so on. Now we can concatenate or put together all of those fields into one entry called a dictionary entry, and we can retrieve all that information with one call. There's now something called an app stage, which allows us in the designer workflow to have elevated controls so that we can have elevated permission to do more things inside the workflow. There's now stages, which they allow us to embed things with conditional logic. So in this accounts payable example, we might want to test who the next approver is, or have the previous approver been approved and what to do if it had or had not been. As go-to logic, We now have looping logic, which we can iterate on n number of times to do a set of tasks. And there's now cut and paste inside the designer, which we'll also show you. If you get a workflow running that you like, you can now package that as a solution and use it elsewhere. And now there is MS Project integration as well. So these are the things we're going to go over here next. How you can implement stages in something that's practical, how you can use a web call to get data that would enhance your function, how you can cut and paste things, how you can loop through iterations, how you can use dictionary objects, how you can use a task wizard to set up a complex task workflow, and how you can still keep 2010 workflows there. This screenshot here shows you the commands that are built in for dictionary functions, and we will go over some of those. So I'm going to stop here, and please look for the next workflow. Excuse me, the next video.